Hotline FN, episode 13. This is sort of a special week as we're trying to figure out how to schedule in the show around all the Cash Cups going on. So I know that EU Trio Cash Cup is happening at this exact moment, but this is kind of the slot that we can make work, and it's in the afternoon, which is different for me. I didn't work today, so this is, you know, maybe a little higher energy, maybe not. We'll see. Tonight it's just Balla and I, Balla TW, and we'll be taking your calls. So let's talk a little bit first about the, you know, what the show is and what the format is, right? So this is Hotline FN. We're a live call-in show. That means that we need your hot takes, bold predictions, and unpopular opinions surrounding the competitive Fortnite scene so that we can talk about them, we can debate them, we can get to the root of issues and opinions, and really sort of deep dive onto a whole bunch of topics. So that's kind of where we're at. That's what's exciting for us. The way you do it is you type !Hotline FN. After you press !Hotline FN, you will get a link to the Discord where you'll submit your topic, your opinion, your take, and then you'll join a waiting room, and we'll bring you in to hang out and have a good show. Okay, so that being said, how is my audio levels, guys? My my reader here is saying I'm way lower than I normally am, and that's got me wigged out a little bit. Before we hop into the show proper here, it's good. Okie dokie. Okie dokie then. All right. So let's bring in Senor Balla TW. How you doing, Balla?
I'm doing great, Tim. I'm a little tired because I just got in from a plane this morning. I got in at like 8:30, flew at 11:30. Red eyes are rough. Woo. So I'm a little tired, but earlier on, I like your hat, by the way. I had to point that out. It just says vibes. That's really cool. You're awesome.
It's actually my wife's
Classic
hat.
Hotline FN. Well, regardless, it's your hat now.
My hat now. She's got sweat in it enough. She'll never want it back.
There you go. I like it. Good strat.
What have you been up to, Balla? What have you been up to this last week? I mean, it's been pretty public, but
man, so
what
much.
you gonna do with it?
So much. So Twitch Rivals, I just finished that with Monster Deface and Wavepunk in LA. With Twitch. So it was pretty cool working for Twitch. Even though I kind of do that already, and then I did a bunch of VOD reviews. I even did one for Epic, which they posted on their Fortnite Comp Twitter, and then I also did an like intro to competitive concepts type of thing with them as well. So that's up on their YouTube and everything, which is pretty crazy to me that I'm producing content for a major video game studio. Like that's insane.
Pretty rad, honestly. Like that's pretty
one of the
slick.
Biggest games in the world, and that's insane. So I don't know how I got here, but we're here now, and it's kicking my butt. I'm really tired.
Ooh, I can imagine. When are you headed out of town again anytime soon, or you gotta sit chill for a minute?
I'm most likely going to be sitting chill for a little bit, but I'm going to my brother's wedding. Actually, I might be going. I'm going to my brother's wedding in September, early September, and then I'm going on vacation for a little bit to Europe. But besides like traveling for this, I'm actually kind of hoping that I'm not.
Perfect. Okay.
Too much.
Let me fix my audio here a bit. People are saying I'm pretty quiet, which is weird because I definitely didn't change anything. Strange.
Yeah, that's the nature of streaming, ain't it? You
Ain't
don't touch a thing and it all changes. It could also be me because I had to take my audio setup, so I didn't get a chance to like really do much.
It's me, like me personally. My mic is quiet, and I don't get it. And I'm turning up the volume, and nothing's moving. Check. Hey, that's better. Hey, how's it feel for you,
that's
Balla?
my fault. It sounds good. Yeah.
Cool. All right, how's that sound, guys? Good? Awesome. All right. Sweet. Okay, so while we wait for some topics to filter in here, please submit your topics, guys. !Hotline FN. Get on the show. Call in. That's the point. Well, let's talk about kind of the obvious stuff here, Balla. So we've got a few interesting things. We've got the Cash Cups. We've got the first week of the FCS, the Fortnite Championship Series. And then, of course, we have all of the shenanigans with updates and the brutes, the mechs. So, I mean, honestly, probably let's start with week 1 of FCS, right? Pre-nerf, but post spawn rate nerf mechs in the first week of this event.
I like that we start with that first because that gets me a little less heated because the first weekend of FCS was awesome.
It was fantastic.
Like, freaking awesome. Even with the mechs, like sure, there was a bunch of stuff that happened with the mechs, but it averaged out enough that it was still good, which is crazy to me because it shouldn't have averaged out enough.
People weren't abusing them as much as you'd think. Yeah. Yeah,
exactly. But I think we're going to still see, like, I don't think people have figured out how to use the brutes in competitive, even post nerf. Like, it's still something that you have to think about. But with the rates as they are, it's like random and you can't really play for them as it is, right? It's just an RNG factor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You have to decide if it's going to be. Well, we'll get into that. But yeah. The FCS, like, so far, how do you feel about the format? It's only been week 1, right? So accumulating the series points doesn't mean a lot, but it's held up well. Like, I feel like the event was very representative of skill. At least on the West Coast, we had Timmcd, Edgy, and Rex win another trio event on the West, which is mind blowing. What are they, 3 for 3 now? Yeah.
Yeah, 3 for 3. All 3 trio tournaments. That's nuts. Super representative of skill, right? Clicks, Prims, and Spades taking first place in the other in East.
Yep.
And a whole bunch of like, it was mostly people we knew. Actually, it was pretty much everybody we knew too.
It was people we knew.
With Dementos and Flexi and like, yeah.
An interesting thing for me is that on East especially, like, it's a bunch of people we know, but it's also like not necessarily a lot of trios we know, right? Like, so you've got Booga, Clarity G, and Stretch. You don't see Clarity G and Stretch on, like, I don't know. I feel like you don't super regularly see them in top 5 like all the time, right? So like as a trio, feels kind of new.
Yeah, but that's all the result of that crazy like trio swapping that happened right before this, right?
Truth. But then you got like Rote TW, Hornet, and Tickers in second place. Again, like everyone knows these guys are great and they're grinders, like they're around. But it's just really interesting to see this like relatively new trio, as well as the third place slot being taken by these. There's no huge names on these teams, and they're here showing up and performing.
I think that's also a result of the fact that this is like literally the first serious trios event. Sure, there was the cash cups before, there was the one-time cash cup and stuff like that, but those had issues, remember? And they weren't this type of format. And at the same time, too, they were just one-offs before World Cup when nobody was focused on trios. We didn't even have Trio Arena, right? We barely had that, like, except for like a
3 days for the one event.
Yeah. And then we had it for a week. So yeah, there was tons of developments in the meantime, and people started to practice. So now we're seeing the landscape develop, and it's just going to develop and develop and develop. And I think actually, when we look at the seeding at the end of the season for the FCS points, the series points, they're probably going to have a good representation of the top 10 or whatever of the players. I think that's going to be a good representation, actually, depending on how that points breakdown actually works out, because we've never seen that tested. And
it's something interesting because with Fortnite, you've got, I am of the opinion, and I think you agree, that consistency really matters and should be the ultimate like defining factor, at least in qualifications for like the biggest of events, right? But it really does paint a different picture, because whoever ends up in this top 10, it's very possible that these top 10 on consistency points never got a first place, right? It's possible we'll see teams in these top 10 that never even got a top 10 place, you know what I mean? Depending on how this shakes out for the next couple of weeks. And so it kind of highlights different forms of skill too, which is something that's really interesting to me. Being able to really work the system and get these really solid one-off performances, or also just like playing extremely consistently, which is in a lot of ways just as hard of a skill, if not harder.
Sure.
So that's really interesting.
100%.
So coming out of the FCS, we had the Contender solo pop-up that a lot of people, especially in the competitive scene, were not super happy with. And from my standpoint, I can't imagine that a lot of the Contenders League players are super happy either, right? Because basically it's just, hey, everyone who's better than me, come pick on me. It's like a step up from pubs. It's just like, I don't know. It feels weird that it's like almost an attempt at like a amateur league, but it's not set up in any way at all to like actually facilitate that in those players. I don't know. What have you been hearing, Balla? What do you think about that event? I'm actually surprised that you're taking that stance, because I would have thought that you would have taken the stance of like, hey man, it's just like extra, like you don't have to play it, whatever. Like, oh sure. I mean, I don't think it should go away necessarily. I think it could be better is all.
Okay, yeah. So I actually don't. So I originally the idea of it was really cool to me, but the fact that it's one round, there's no barriers to entry at all. Like I feel like they could do just like a champions one and a contenders one on the same night, like they did for Share the Love, right? And that would be great.
Yeah.
Remember Share the Love? What a contenders league was awesome. That was actually, people were saying like that was the best practice they've ever gotten. The champions one wasn't so good because everybody was W King in that one, but and there was no reason for them not to, right? Because they already qualified for what they needed to do. So yeah, there's issues with it in the form of no longevity. There's no meaning to winning or doing well in it at all besides getting the prizing at the end of it, right? And in order to do that, in order to get that prizing, you need to play like you're playing on a low pop region in World Cup, right? Where you have to, there's only one spot to play and you have to slay out. So there's definitely issues with it. I appreciate that they tried it, but my stance is like, it feels like that these events are meant for practice for the community, like a way for us to, exercise our competitive love, but they can't do the entire like 3-step stage because there's not enough time, that sort of thing, and there's not going to be enough players or whatever that they feel comfortable with. So my stance is just like, I want the tools that we can just handle our own practice, handle our own tournaments, get funding from other places, right? Epic doesn't need to be spending all this. Just spend some time developing the custom system and just literally it's a one-time thing. Sure, there might be, some support on it, but it's a one-time like boom burst. We talked about it way back on Hotline FN where custom system is not in where it needs to be. But if they did that, then they wouldn't need to do this for us. Yeah,
I agree completely. Also, it's awkward because you've got this brand new format in the form of trios that is just like, I don't think we're at our peak yet. Like even the top teams still have a way to go, I feel like, before like truly hitting this is what the best of the best looks like in trios. And that just requires time and practice. And already it's been kind of awkward, even with my own trio, who doesn't, necessarily have like World Cup aspersions, but wants to do our best to be like, wait, are we going to practice tonight? Are we doing the solo cup? What about tomorrow? Are we doing that one? Which one are we going to skip? We're going to skip all of them? Like, what's going on here, right? And it's tough because while the FCS is almost certainly like more important, chances to win money are chances to win money. And I can imagine there's plenty of other trios out there facing the same situations where, well, this guy who's really good in our team, he wants to take his chance to win cash, but then it shoots ourselves in the foot for Saturdays and Sundays. So that's
but
also
the other thing is it shoots the entire community in the foot in that sense, right? Because we need 100 players to play a custom, right? We need 100 players. And if there's 50 of them or 20 of them even that are playing the Cash Cup, then all of a sudden that 100 players that we had, we can't play anymore. So it shoots a bunch of people in the foot. It's not, if one team decides not to play, it's already affecting other people's practice in their desired practice environment. So
I agree completely. I think that even if the solo Cash Cups were some other reward format than just money, that would be another way to kind of ease up a bit, or like you said, do the champion and the contender ones at the same time and offer different prize pools for each of them.
I saw in chat, like, what if it offered FCS points, something like that? Like
that actually, in the future, having a mixed format bag like that could be so cool, where it's like the main thing that gets you the most points is Saturdays and Sundays with trios or whatever, but your solo performances throughout the weeks. I mean, I don't know. That also splits practice and gets awkward and stuff too throughout the week. So I still don't think that's 100%. An awesome idea, but
something else.
Something.
And we tried a bunch of stuff. Like Share the Love was great in terms of providing good practice. Like if you remember, that was amazing. And we didn't have queue time issues. We didn't have any issues. You can play both solos and duos. It was 2 different modes at the same time, and it was amazing. So I don't really quite see. It's again one of these situations where it's like, well, we already did this. We already tried this. We already figured out what worked. Why are we going back to it? Right?
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyways, hopefully it changes. I hope that this doesn't stay the entire season, because I honestly think that it's going to have a negative impact on FCS. Just like you said about practice, but just to me, right? It's going to be a lot of people's first impressions on playing competitive Fortnite. Is a contenders guy queuing up for the contenders Cash Cup, or a champions guy who just got it playing champions Cash Cup, and he's like, oh, this is like arena. Okay, I can do this. I just have to W key a lot. And not only is that a frustrating experience because W King is It is a frustrating experience, almost certainly, unless you are
Sure.
the best of the best of the best of the best, right? But they're learning that way. They're learning that this is what tournaments are like. So when they enter the FCS, all of a sudden, they have this poor impression that competitive Fortnite is about W keying and trying to get the most points every single game rather than playing out consistently and trying to get to the end game and trying to maximize your points in the end game.
And that's the interesting thing, right? Because that was the road to success in World Cup qualifiers, period. It was like if you were in top 10 contention, the only way to make sure you get first place is to slay out all throughout the game, every game, as best as you could.
Okay,
right?
for small pop, right? Not for EU, not for NA. NA and EU, sure, you had to have maybe one really crazy performance, but the rest of it was consistent. The
Maybe
rest of it was
good game, yeah. Well, the thing, even in East, you had like crazy, you had crazy kill to placement stat lines for the first place position for the qualifying position.
No, you wouldn't. No. It was pretty even throughout
like
every single
50%.
week, except for 50-50. It was like 50% placement points versus 50% elimination points. Slightly, ever so slightly favored in eliminations, but there was also tons of people who were slightly ever so favored in placements. I think it was pretty even.
Okay, all right.
Not in the small pop regions that only had one qualifying spot.
Sure, like on West, that was wild. But
yes. Yes.
But my point is to back it back up to FCS and the weekly solos events. Like you said, the FCS very specifically through the way it works rewards consistency and rewards like playing for placement because of that, right? And then the solo events throughout the week do not. They do not much at all, right? And so it's this weird dichotomy, like you said, of introducing people into. This is the like lower key competitive event. By the way, it's nothing like what our actual competitive event pushes, right? So that's kind of interesting and weird. Yeah, I agree. Also, the problem is though, I don't want them to make Wednesdays and Thursdays back it up even more. I don't want to make it. I don't want to make them part of the FCS. I don't want them to contribute because then we have an even worse setup than World Cup qualifiers where you're grinding for 10 weeks.
5 days a week.
5 days a week, like always, every week for 5 weeks. Like that sounds rough already. Like giving up your entire Saturday and let's be realistic, your entire Sunday for 5 weeks in a row. Like it's already just super rough and a really like hard requirement, especially the competitive scene that's mostly still in school. Like it just like boggles my mind that that's their like go-to still. Just play a lot all the time, always.
Item's dad, the original schedule for the solo cash cups was 4 to 8, I believe. And so that was like overlapping with the end of school for some people. So Item's dad tweeted out, he's like, why are we encouraging school delinquency? He put it in such like a nice way.
Why is this happening right now?
Yeah, it kind of feels like there's no way to play always and be rewarded for playing, right? Like I want to be, I can never play a cash cup with the current schedule. I could have played with the one that was bad for kids, but I could have played that one. I can't play this one. I can never play this one just because of how my schedule works. Yeah, it's too late. It's too late. And I grind at those hours in terms of like content and stuff like that, and whatever. I just can't. That's the point I'm trying to make. And I can never feel that. I literally can never feel competitive Fortnite anymore. And I need to be able to, right? The only way I can do it is by playing scrims every once in a while. It's sad. It's sad.
Yeah, it is sad.
Anyway.
That is a bummer. That's actually super frustrating. I mean, I'm on the opposite boat, right? Where I get off work, later in the evening every day. So the change is extremely beneficial for me to get to play. Not that I have a particular affinity for solos anyway, especially you got to taste the trios. I've never played a solo competitive game ever. I've always played team games, and just solos, I can't do it. It's the mind game is too real for me. I can't do it.
It's a grind. No matter what. It's not just Fortnite.
Especially 15 games in 4 hours. Like normally I get through 6 games and you're like,
think about that.
I only need to get through 4 more. I only got 45 minutes left to go. This is fine. Now I get through 6 games and realize there's still 2 hours on the clock and I still have 9 games left. I'm like, nah, I'm good. I'm dipping. I'm good for the evening. All right, so let's bring in our first caller of the evening. Hey, what's your name and where are you calling from?
Hello, Tim, Balla. Good evening, everyone.
Hey, Ulrich, what's up, buddy?
Thank you for having me in chat, for having me on this show. I'm Ulrich. I'm calling from the UK. It's a civilized time for once. And today I'm bringing a rather unpopular opinion. I know one which Balla disagreed with because I've seen him tweeting about it, against it multiple times. And this is to do with how the point system works with placement. And there are two different methods of having a point system. Epic Games is point system, has thresholds where after you get into the top 25, you get a certain amount of points. I'm using solo as an example. And then after you get into top 15, you get a certain amount of points. And then you get into top 5 and you get a certain amount of points. And then when you win, you get a certain amount of points. The other option, the more supposedly competitive option used by ESL and WSOE, is
Supposedly.
basically starting from a certain amount, like a certain placement, so 50th, for example, in Katowice. Every single person that dies, you gain points. And I think that the former is actually the better one, and this is for two reasons. The first one is to do with how easy it is to follow. When you have this current threshold system where you get points for top 25, top 15, top 5, and winning, particularly in solos where there are 100 players and 100 storylines to follow, it's very easy to follow what's happening to each player because there are only 4 different levels of how well you can do in each game. You can basically classify, well, 5 actually. You can classify people's games and how well they went, apart from kills, into basically didn't make any points for placement, top 25, top 15, top 5, or they won the game. And I found that I watched every single ESL Katowice game, and everything it was just very difficult to know how well each player had done every time, particularly in duos as well. Now, the other reason why is I think it adds another interesting dynamic to the game. It's very easy to call it uncompetitive, but it adds another interesting dynamic, particularly in trios and duos when some of the other players are down. It makes an interesting dynamic to see if they can make each placement threshold and playing for each placement threshold. It adds another interesting thing to follow to the game. And this brings me on to my kind of main point, but I'll get into that later because I think Balla and Tim disagree with me, and I'd like to hear what you have to say. If you do.
Well, yeah. We're just gonna
Absolutely.
we're just gonna tackle this, like what you've brought here, and moved on. Thank you so much, Arcade, for coming on the show again. Welcome back, and thanks for this topic. And we're gonna move you off, but have a fantastic evening.
Brilliant, thank you very much.
Bye. All right, so he kind of makes an interesting point here, as far as like from like a casual viewership kind of way, or not even necessarily casual, just from a viewership perspective of if you see your favorite or just the person you're watching dies at 12th, all you have to remember is that, oh, okay, that's 2 sets of placement. I know exactly how many points he got. That's easy to remember in my head. Versus in a WSOE or ESL version where 12th might be like 88 points or whatever, and 13th might be 87 points. It's a little trickier to keep that straight in your head, how they're doing. You've got to wait for the leaderboard in essence, right? To kind of get that kind of a picture. Obviously, Balla, you had way more experience with those. You casted one of those style of events, so
I casted all the style of events. I've casted pretty much all the
WSOE
formats
as well. Yeah. Well, I
didn't do WSOE. I did Secret Skirmish, which was super thresholdy. I did ESL, which was not thresholdy at all, and then I did the World Cup style, which is slightly less thresholdy. Even though it is still hybrid. Yeah, it's a mix. So so let's bring it back, right? The original format, the big bonus was like the best format for competitive Fortnite, at least for Epic. And that had really strict placement thresholds and kill threshold, right? Like you needed to get 3 kills to get a point, you need to get 5 kills to get a point, and then each placement, it was down to, what was the original placement? For duos was like top 5, and for solos I think it was top 10 to get your first placement point. Only 1 placement point. So they changed that, and everybody agreed with that because they pushed the first placement threshold in solos to 25. That's a quarter of the lobby. That's pretty reasonable to me for like the first thresholds. Yeah. I think it could be more, right? Because it's that thing where it's it's well, this guy placed 26 with 7 eliminations, but the guy who did something, I don't know, that I can't think of the scenario right now. I'm way too tired.
Sure, but I get it.
The point is, there's certain scenarios that can play out where it feels like this guy should have done way better than the guy who did poorly, right? Or there's always those scenarios, and that's why it feels uncompetitive. That's what Ulrich was referencing. But the move up to top 25 in solos, let's just think about solos for now, because that's like a really easy format that everybody knows.
Yeah.
Is increasing it, and it's making that less likely to happen. And then each elimination mattering, they got rid of kill thresholds completely. There's 1 point per elim, is very important to alleviate that in some sense. But I don't agree with the fact that it makes it easier to watch. I think in the current sense of the way, it does kind of, that makes sense, especially how a lot of production companies and how the game is displayed, especially like at World Cup, for example, where standings, you have to wait for standings. But I also, like, there is not just 5 thresholds. Just because that's where the points come from, you can clearly see that somebody placed higher than somebody else in the game, right? You can clearly see that. I think there's one simple solution to a lot of different elements of formats is every single game that we have, we need to show what happened in that game. Just that game. I don't care what happened cumulatively. Just show what happened in that game. That would literally solve what you're asking about, Tim, and what Ulrich said, which is it's hard to track game to game how somebody did, right? And sure, you have to wait for the leaderboard. That sucks, but that's also just a limitation of the game itself, not the format.
Yeah.
Right?
Well,
I mean, sure,
yes and no.
If you have a really, really simple format,
then you don't need to wait for the leaderboard because it's simple enough for you to grok it yourself, right? And that kind of being the argument, right? Being able to see live exactly what's happening, as Ulrich clarifies in chat. It's the question is whether or not that is beneficial enough to competitive as a whole to make you not want to. No, to make you want to move away from doing ESL style scoring systems, right? If that ability to be able to say specifically in this game, I know the person I'm watching has made this many points, or he needs to do this to get this many more points. I mean, heck, is that even valuable as a caster? Like, to have those thresholds, to be able to say like that's a strong talking point. Whereas just like it needs to like wait for one more person to die to get 3 more points versus one more person to die to get 1 more point.
It's a strong talking point, but is it who actually cares about that, right? There's 10 people who reach the top 10 threshold, right? So
yeah,
there's 10 people. Like, how can I break down that there was 10 people? Yeah, sure, I am paying attention to certain people who have the chance to do it, but is it something? It's to me, it's artificial, right? I literally don't care. I just care that somebody is going to be doing what they need to do to get what they want
to do well.
Yeah. So casting to me, ESL Katowice was way easier actually, because not only did we have that, it heavily favors consistency when you have this amount of granularity in your format where you can place every single one. It matters.
Yeah.
So
I agree with that 100%.
Favors consistency, and that's why number one, like, yes, the threshold format is kind of uncompetitive. Because it doesn't favor consistency, but also like maybe if we extend the games, it might be a little bit better in terms of consistency. I don't know. The one thing I liked about ESL Katowice is that there were starting to be clear leaders. There's a threshold system. Even after 10 games, probably, there would be maybe like a lot of clear leaders, but anybody could pop off at any single time. Whereas at Katowice, it wasn't like that. I don't know. Formats are interesting. Formats are really interesting. I prefer the Katowice style.
Yeah, and I think also it's interesting because we talked a little bit about how it impacts your casting, but it also impacts your moment to moment playing as a player, right? Instead of like you as a caster get to focus on these players just doing their best to work towards a win rather than individual threshold placements and stuff, right? And each player gets to focus on doing their best towards a win. You don't get the situation where like there's 26 people alive, everybody hide in a box, wait for someone to die so we all get our 3 points. And then move on, right? Not that's necessarily super common, but you see it in people's individual mindsets as they're playing all the time because it's stupid not to play that way, right? Just because of the way thresholds work. So I think I tend to agree that the general overall health of the gameplay itself is made better. You seem to think that casting's made easier and better in those situations as well. So yeah, I can't say I agree with Ulrich that that having thresholds makes it better, just like objectively. Myth busted.
The one last thing I want to say. Oh, well, no, it's not myth busted, right? This is very, very, very subjective. But the one thing I would say in positive of the thresholds, actually, in terms of kill threshold, like there's something that's missing now, and I don't want kill thresholds at all. But at Katowice, I was noticing that fights would start and then they would disengage really fast because you didn't actually have to end your fights. You just had to get that one guy, and then it was like, okay, cool, I'm out. Like, and so it'd be, I don't know, it was like it was a tease whenever there was fights. it was a tease whenever there was fights because it's like, okay, well, Bizzle and Demo are about to fight Zay and Saf. Oh, Bizzle died. And then Demo is just like, okay, well, they ran away. It's whatever.
Yep. Well, it's interesting, right? Because thresholds work as like this sort of weird. It's like time gating almost, right? If you have the course of a game, and you're getting kills throughout that game, right? And everyone matters. That's what we have now, right? When you have thresholds, you have these periods of like anything happening here doesn't matter, and then there's a spike of this fight matters a lot, and then you have like a bunch more of like this doesn't matter, this fight matters a lot. Same thing with placements, right? Like 100 through 26 doesn't matter at all. Suddenly in this moment, things are much greater on the line. But what that also causes is during those moments where these things, placement or whatever, you're in between thresholds by a decent gap. It creates this sort of, like you said, like fights aren't as happening as often. You're not making as many crazy plays because you've got to wait for that threshold. You've got to be safe. I feel like not having thresholds open things up wider. And if they do decide that they want kills to matter less, I think the only way to do that beyond it's adjusting point scaling, or it's adding in thresholds for kills, right?
That's something that helps dramatically with the whole bigger point system, right? The point scaling is actually easier to do because there's so much more granularity again that you don't have to be like, well, does top 10 mean as much as top 12 or what? All that different stuff.
I was really surprised when FCS came out and it wasn't using the new trio arena where kills are heavily disincentivized through the new scaling system. Instead, it uses the old system where kills are equally incentivized, more or less. And placements are on such hard thresholds. All right, before we bring our next caller in here, we got a bunch of new viewers as we've been going live, so I want to reiterate that this is a live call-in show. You're going to see in a second here when we bring in our next caller. We want your hot takes, your bold predictions, your unpopular opinions. I'm going to say those three all the time. Type ! Hotline FN. Get your take, opinion, topic, whatever. Get it approved, and we'll get you on the show. We want to run through a lot of people, so listen to Ulrich in the chat. It's really fun. We won't make fun of you. Probably. Let's bring in our next caller. Hey, where are you calling from and what's your name?
Hey, what's up, boys? My name's Rocket Fuel, and I'm hailing from NA East.
Hey, what's up, NA East Rocket Fuel? What did you want to talk about tonight?
So I think something that doesn't get touched upon much in like the current state of the game, people tend to focus on, lack of mobility, combat mechs, and whatnot. But personally, I've been playing since season 2, and something that I find kind of as a pain point playing competitive is current state of the map. And I know the plan that Epic has throughout season 10 is to have these rift zones continue to change the map and revert it back to the old seasons. But if you think about some of those old seasons, it was kind of barren and there wasn't a lot of loot. So I was kind of wanting to see what you guys thought about that in regards to how that will affect competitive in terms of viable landing spots and kind of the flow of the map. Personally, for me, I think the snow area sucks. I don't really like the top right corner, so it's tough for me to kind of navigate the map right now because I feel like there's a lot of more or less dead zones.
Awesome. Great. This sounds fantastic to talk about. Thank you so much for bringing your opinion onto Hotline FN, Rocket Fuel.
For sure.
Have a fantastic evening.
So he's basically saying that the state of the map isn't good, and I don't know, it's one of those things to me, I don't really care that much about the map besides mobility options and stuff like that. I'll play on whatever, to be honest, besides these rift zones are really weird. So it's not just bringing back old stuff, right? It's changing things that you won't expect. Soccer fields is just gone. There was never no soccer field. At least I haven't played in a game that had no soccer field. And Tilted Town you can't build. It's not, Tilted Town was never a thing. It's Tilted Towers, but themed differently, and then retail has zombies. So it's like, it's not always that. We're gonna see some weird stuff. I'm pretty sure it's great. It's pretty crazy.
It's really weird, and this is something I've seen talked about a lot. It's like a shared community sentiment right now, right? Like, oh, they nerfed the mech, the game still sucks, and this is why, right? And it's actually kind of funny because on the Fortnite competitive subreddit right now, you have two top of the front page threads. One saying retail row is amongst the POIs that sucks now, and one saying retail row is great. What are you talking about? Because retail row is great. What are you talking about? Right? Like, zombies can be frustrating, but from a competitive standpoint, retail's probably the best place to have. Like, it's probably the best place to drop. You get so much
the
loot.
best place to drop. Yeah, sure, but not. Yeah. It's not competitive.
Yeah,
how
it
is
is
that competitive?
What are you watching? You watching how many of the top 10 in every region were landing retail row this week for FCS?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying it's really fucking good, but it's like unfair. It's so OP. Like, competitive.
Yeah. That's that. You neither here nor there on that one, but like, it's not bad. It's not a bad place to go, is what I'm trying to say. Whereas like, you've got changes like Tilted Town again, like not being able to build sucks and it's awkward and it's weird to fight in, but like, it's still not. I don't know if it's a bad place to drop, right? You've got a bunch of these controller players who performed crazy well in the solo cups. Obviously, a lot of them are landing there. I don't know. We had 2 trios, I believe, on West that were landing Tilted Town that did okay, but it's still like, it's not fun.
There's
it's
a
not
couple
a fun
people
place
who land
to
there.
be.
It's just like all these things are unfun, right? It's not Fortnite, and it affects the game in ways that is so much beyond the
individual drop spot,
the early game, right? It's so much beyond the early game. There's people who can come. I was talking to Monster about this actually. We never see anybody come out of Tilted with a double barrel or something like that, but like that can happen, and it's like a weird thing. Retail, you fight people coming out of freaking retail, and they have a kit that you cannot stop. It's just like weird dynamics among the map. And what I like about it is the fact that I don't have to participate, except in the fact that if I get forced to go there, even through rotating or in an end game, that I will literally not have, I'll just die and I'm going to have a good time doing it.
In Tilted Town,
It's Tilted Town and retail.
Retail is like sucky for end games, but it's fantastic to rotate through if the team's gone already, right? Because again, it's just busted. It's infinite loot. Like it's kind of silly. I think a big part of the problem here.
There's more chance of fighting there too. So like it pushes like all this loot goes in different spots. Like the rotation. Somebody talked about it way before Hotline FN. How like a specific spot and rotating and finding an elimination there like affects so much around the rest of the stuff.
Yeah, and it's especially weird because like fewer people, I feel like, I don't know have the stats for it yet, right? But I feel like fewer people in total in these competitive events are landing Tilted Town than
Tim, just make the stats up.
Than prior. Okay, yeah, fewer people 100% of the time are landing less at Tilted Town. And similar with like before there would be maybe, I don't know, I went through a lot of NA West VODs. I didn't go through a lot of NA East, but like even Soccer Field itself was a split off drop for a few trios, right? And especially in solos, it's a viable landing spot. Not anymore. Dusty, barely a viable landing spot now, and you're guaranteed to have to either, traverse a long distance, back to factories to get the additional loot you need, or you're fighting people off drop for like a total of 10 chests, right? Like, it sounds garbage to me. Plus, you got the retail issues. It just feels like so much of the map's loot is gone, right? Dusty Divot had way more loot than, including floor loot and chests, way more loot and materials than current Dusty and factories and whatever has. Right?
And that's what Rocket Fuel was alluding to, right? There's like less loot on the map.
Less on the map.
Agree on all parts of that, but also it's like that sort of stuff balances itself out in a certain sense, right? Where certain spots, and I know this is antithetical to what I just said about Retail Row, but like Retail Row is like so egregious. It just like all mixed around. Somebody in the chat says the loot's not gone, it's just all in retail.
Perfect. Well, that's kind of an issue, right? Because it makes dropping weird and strange because you've got way more people dropping in spots where they weren't before because they can't drop in their old places. And then you've got the weird situations where you don't have as many rotation spots to pick up additional loot to go through as you did before. On top of already sparse rotation and lack of map mobility, it creates this weird situation where I feel like that's the majority of where the sentiment comes from in certain communities of it's just not as fun anymore.
Can I throw a wrench in all this though? Like I actually in the full competitive custom lobby, like I actually think that all this mobility like and possibly like loot being changed a little bit. I think the scavenger routes are like much stronger now, especially now the ballers are gone and there's like no slipstreams and stuff like that. And I like that. I like the fact that there's these outskirt paths that are viable in so many senses that you don't have to like gamble on the fact, oh, is there going to be a baller on this route who already like looted everything, right? There's a couple of stuff that you can grab randomly, and I think that's buffed because of this. I think that is good for competitive because we see these engagements that happen at spots that you normally wouldn't.
Yes and no. I mean, it's tough because I feel like scavenger paths become less good the more people who are pursuing scavenger paths, even disparate ones, right? Because you have someone who lands, say, like poverty proper, right? They land right on the buildings versus you've got someone who lands at bridge on the other side, the bridge from desert back into poverty. Like they would normally one guy or the other, you've got a pretty good chance of having all of that to yourself, right? Now you're going to be contested on that scavenger loot path almost every game, right? And that's the same case. I used to run a scavenger path with hoverboards on the southwest corner of the map, contested every game in the solos, right? Like people are being forced more into these scavenger paths, which reduces the value of them significantly in my mind. So I don't know. It's weird. It's strange. I definitely enjoy having less mobility in general in the game, less like permanent mobility. I don't have a problem necessarily with that, right? Prior to Mechs, prior to Junk Rift, I was even confident saying like, I really like the state of the game. There are a bunch of guns in that I don't want in anymore. And that still holds true for me, which is why I'm kind of confused about the current sentiment of, sure, you nerfed Mechs, but, I'm not saying we need to like praise anybody for that or anything, but like, sure, you nerfed Mechs, but the game still sucks and isn't fun anymore. Like, what are you guys talking about? Like, the end of Season 10 was a blast, and like, I didn't have that big of a problem with the beginning of Season 9 sans Mechs, right? Like, personally, I really enjoy the change of pace from a competitive standpoint, even with a lot of these changes. I
think that sentiment comes from the treatment, not necessarily the game itself. Yeah. I don't think that people actually like. It's just the people who pretty much have already stopped playing who are mostly saying that, and I think it's legit the treatment of the community and the competitive community specifically. Well, really the community everywhere, but yeah, I think that's where people are like upset and frustrated, and rightly so. Not the state of the game.
Yeah, and it's, I didn't want to like touch on this too much, but regarding like the treatment of the community, I thought it was very unfortunate. I was going to say funny, but it's not even funny, honestly, how we got 2 or 3 public updates of, sorry, this is how we want our game to be. The mechs are operating exactly how we intended them to operate. And then in their nerf, they say, it was farming faster than intended. The missiles are doing more damage than intended. Bullshit. You said this was exactly what you wanted, and now you're backpedaling after like the strongest boldface. I
didn't even read the reasoning. Like
they gave like some reasonings for each of the nerfs.
No, I know. So there's always that like italic thing that we were all excited about. We're like, yeah, Epic's giving reasoning. I've just stopped reading it.
Yeah, because it wasn't accompanied by any like grander statement of like, we're sorry. Like this actually isn't the right approach. No, they're just like, this is 100% the right approach. Wait, we're taking it back though. But it's still the right approach. But we're saying that we were wrong. But like without actually saying we were. All right, let's yikes on that one. Again, reiterate, guys. Make sure you submit some calls. Shio, are you getting in here? I see you in here.
Yo, Shio, where you at, baby? Hop in. Let's go. Get it going.
Shio, I pulled you right in. I skipped the whole process for you. How are you doing? How are you doing, brother?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Pretty good. How many flowers are on your shirt right now?
0, because I don't have a shirt on.
God damn it, Shio!
Hey, even better. Good thing he's not on camp, boys.
What are you saying about my man Shio? I would appreciate that. All right, Shio, what do you want to talk about today?
Let's just say that.
All right, we're going to Mixer. Mixer allows shirtless Shios.
Actually,
No.
let's make some business moves. Yeah, so my thing was the update cycle. So in Dota and League, they've had a history with experimenting with 2 weeks versus 1 month patches because their game kind of, had a different type of cycle going in, dying out in enthusiasm with the player base. And both types of update cycles have a different effect. So how would like casual and comp change if we had like big 1 month huge patches, where we saw last time I think it was 9.4, the Rift to Go got big vaulted, and the entire meta kind of changed. So big patches where like they do a big shakeup like that, I hope they never do this, but supposedly like remove cones or something ridiculous, and we have to deal with that for like a whole month, right? So how would that work rather than the whole 2 week cycle that we want to expect, just a constant drone of content every week, get sad every 2 weeks, or expect something big every month?
It's interesting to me because I don't necessarily think there's an issue with the cadence of items added to the game. I'm talking specifically about items right now, but if it was done like handled more intelligently, right? There's no issue in my mind of adding items to the game. It's just the game they want to be. If those items are like balanced really well right off the bat, or if those items are going into LTMs or pubs before making it into competitive modes, they can add items as quickly as they like in that case. From my perspective, the thing that really bothers me is things like large map changes every 2 weeks, those sorts of things where they're changing up what's available to everybody, right? In these ways, I don't know, that bothers me. I would prefer to see monthly large updates. That's kind of what we get, it's a little longer than that with the season updates, but I don't imagine the cadence slowing down at all as it is. But generally speaking, I would love to see some of these changes pushed to a slower cadence if we're not going to get everything.
I don't. So I think they just need a better process for like, because I agree with what basically Monster Defense is saying in the chat. This is the 2 week patches is actually really, really good for content in general and keeping the game fresh like that. That is a goal of theirs, keeping the game fresh and whatever. But I just feel like the process where we get mad every single week, every single patch, because it's like, oh, well, frick, we just got a new thing that changes the game, like, which is very true. It just like doesn't have to be that way. I think if we just did the 2 week stuff and then every month just added it to Arena or changed Arena in whatever fashion, right, then maybe that'd be cool. But yeah, there's so many good moments that come out of 2 week patches, and it's really, really, really good for the streamers and content creators because guess what? They see a boost every single patch, every single patch, and they get something weird to experiment and play with, right? But it's a source of frustration for the simple fact that it changes something every single week, and there's just not enough time for good, solid QA.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. How many patches are filled with bugs that are game breaking and ruin somebody's day or game, right? Which matters. Every single one, every single new item, and so many unrelated things break too.
Yeah.
Well, I want them to slow it down.
would you ever? Yeah, I mean, again, from a competitive standpoint, as long as the slowed down release cycle just applies to competitive, I don't care what they're doing to pubs and stuff, right? They can add stuff as quickly as they want, vault, unvault every other day, whatever they want to do, right? That's actually an incredible. There are a few games out there that do, these sort of rotating game modes and that kind of stuff that are drastically different. They could just be doing that with pubs, like the 10 days of unvaulting. They could just be doing that. People would love that. Oh, today the gun I really like is back yet. I'm definitely going to play today, right? That kind of stuff. You kind of get this approach almost of League of Legends and rotating free champion rosters, except it's in pubs today. These guns are, unvaulted or whatever. Great. They can drive so much interest and excitement, but just slow it down a bit for competitive. Give people a little more time.
I'll play some of that stuff too. Like that sounds fun. Like, yeah, sure. Throw the brute in pubs for a week or whatever. See how it plays out and whatever. Like, let's have a blast.
Give us brutes and planes 1 week, like whatever.
Like that sounds fresh and stuff like that. And sure,
that sounds so Subway.
Stuff like that. But like, yeah, right. Let's get the foot long patch notes here.
Sponsor us.
Yeah, there's so many different opportunities to approach this, and I think if there's no changes, we want it to be slow. Well, if there's no changes, there's no changes. But the one thing that we want is slow it down, at least for some portion of the.
Yep, because they already have incredible points where they could be introducing these changes, right? FCS, okay, it's 5 weeks. We can hold off making drastic changes for 5 weeks. Or picture this, let's not make our premier events 5 weeks of grinding long, right? You know, but that allows them to say, okay, FCS is over. Bam, here's our patch with all these cool things, you know, like kind of like World Cup, right? But obviously, hopefully with better balanced cool things, and then give people a bunch of time to work with those things for the next FCS series, whatever. Like they've already got these really smart spots to implement these changes, similar to, you know, post and pre-split and post and pre-season and games like League of Legends and Dota and stuff. So I don't know why they wouldn't make better use of that.
Because for me personally, it's like if you have big mid-season updates or something, there's just like a lot of content at once that a lot of people can digest. Suppose like, you know, they introduce a pump change, a combat change, a whole world you can basically explore. You have so much time to kind of try out different classes of play as a casual, or like have different options in competitive. Like the whole World Cup qualifier process. The first 2 weeks, people qualified on a pump SMG meta. Then at one point, shadow grenades are introduced. Like integrity wise as well, that could help a lot of teams in kind of identifying, you know, who they are. In League, you have players who identify with like insane assassins type of characters, right? And then Fortnite, you have people identify with certain loadouts as well. Like you have the people who love combats, people who love the super laser pistol that, you know, they could add in the next mid-season update. That's 100% probably balanced and not broken whatsoever. They could, you know, if there's a big update that just has a chance for kind of, I think the thing I'm missing a lot of is exploring. Like, of course, map changes would be dope to still come out every week, but like a nice big chunky patch update for items and weapons is just fun. It'd be fun to explore again. Is just my main thing.
Yeah. Yep. There's no reason to stick with what we have. Awesome. Thanks so much, Shio. Really appreciate you and your time. Have a fantastic day.
Thank you. Have a great stream, guys.
Thanks so much.
Bye, Shio.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know if there's a whole lot more to say about that other than that we would love to have it slower. Slower, and if not slower, better balance. Thank you, please. And
Yes,
I don't want to harp on it, but I want to go back to the brute nerf again.
Well, we haven't
They
really
nerfed it in half. They nerfed it in half, brother. Like they almost
that mean?
halved its DPS. They like almost dropped the amount of rockets by half. They dropped the damage by almost half of each individual rocket. They dropped the flight speed by 30%. They dropped they nerfed it significantly. It's mind-blowing to me how you go from this is exactly how we want it to be, stop complaining, to such a bit. It's not like they just like dropped some numbers. They completely attempted to gut it. You know what I mean? Like this is like the biggest balance pass they've ever made on anything. It feels like in one swoop.
But is it even enough though? Like
I don't know. I don't see enough of them to know yet. Can you turbo build through them yet? With the nerf to amount and damage?
No, I don't think so.
Because it takes like 3 of them to break through wood now.
Well, regardless, like I don't know. There's just so much about the brute that's like not like everybody has a bad feeling about it, and it's just unequivocal permanent damage to the game that isn't going to be fixed by a nerf, right?
Yeah, it's hard because I normally don't agree with the whole like zombies don't have a place in competitive Fortnite. Like maybe I think maybe could, you know, maybe the way that it's happening right now. Like I don't like that. Like whatever's balanced and fits a defined purpose, like can have a place in competitive Fortnite. But like the mech, just the way it's implemented, either the numbers are going to be so low that it's going to be total trash.
We had the first time zombies came in. Like you remember we used to argue about that all the time in Bumpus chat. Like they're Epic wants to say that Fortnite can be whatever. Can be whatever we want to make it. Yeah. And I don't think that's true, right? We all have played the game for almost 2 years now, and we have a certain expectation of what Fortnite is and what we want Fortnite to be. Yeah. And we can't just change it and make it a PvE game, for example. And sure, we've had zombies a couple of times, but like I don't want to play that. I legit don't want to play that. I don't want to play Brute Night. Like, that's not something that I feel is Fortnite, and specifically, it's definitely not competitive Fortnite, because it just makes it not competitive in some cases. That's not what I want to play. It's just, I love the game that was, and I always say, like, you have to play the game that you have, but, like, at a certain point, it's like, this isn't the game that I want to play anymore.
Yeah, right? And I think you make a great point.
You got to be careful. You have to toe the line, right? You can't just put anything in the game. That's not going to work.
It's tough because that's what they want, right? And they haven't towed the line as well as they thought the line was further out than it was, right? With the casual scene, right? Because competitive scene, again, like they're gonna be catering towards the most money and the most people, right? Like that's just always gonna be the case. But you know, the Brute was stepping over the line, it feels like, even for the casual scene, right? Which is, you know, whatever. But like the zombies, were they over the line? They've brought it back so many times now. For the competitive scene, maybe, definitely. It makes me think of Call of Duty. And you had like the jump to modern or advanced warfare with like jetpacks and shit and exosuits and stuff. And so many players, like it wasn't an unsuccessful game, but plenty of players were just like, this isn't the Call of Duty I'm interested in playing. Like this is not the game I enjoy. Like this one isn't for me, you know? And it's tough because this isn't a Fortnite 2 and we get to keep Fortnite 1 in all its glory. It's great. You just ruined the thing a lot of us enjoyed. And I'm happy that you're happy with it, but it really sucks for me. So yeah, I think you're right. I think I can backpedal there and say that's fine. And the specific issue with the mech is that either it's going to be nerfed into the ground to the point where it's irrelevant, and so it's irrelevant. Why should it be there? Or two, it remains at a point numbers wise that is okay, but the things it does are still garbage, such as be on top of you, left click, and break everything you're building, right? Like, well, how do you nerf that into not like do like, you know, they can make the rockets as ineffective as they want, and still the general gist and purpose of the item is just bonkers and not appropriate.
Yo MJ just said in the chat, the mech isn't the issue either, and I touched on that a little bit earlier. Like, sure, the mech is an issue, so it's Tilted Town, so it's retail, but it's the pattern and it's the attitude that is the biggest issue. And I think to me, I feel like we're at a turning point where the community is like is realizing that this is going to be forever. And if there's no change soon, then this turning point could be huge.
And it's worse than that. It's not just
sad for a lot of us.
It's not just forever. It's like not consistently forever, right? Here's this mech. It's super busted and broken. Get used to it. Okay, all right. Well, I guess if I want to stay playing competitive Fortnite, I should learn how to abuse this. Let's SOM it up and like learn how to like really perform well with this. A week later, just kidding, it's trash. Wait for the next crazy thing. Like, wait, can we at least have consistency in like the mind-bogglingness? Like, pick one and stick with it. I know which one I'd prefer you to pick and stick with, but like, pick one. Damn.
Yep. And it's crazy because like we have this huge incentive of cash, right? We have this huge incentive of the largest prize pools that esports have ever seen. Yet we're still like it's almost getting to the point where it's like, bro, it's not enough. It's not enough. And I'm certainly not there yet. I know a lot of people are certainly not there yet, but again, it's not the mech. It's not any specific individual decision. It's just,
because we can look at FCS week 1 standings to know that skill still, for the most part, far and away prevailed, right? Even in the midst of the mechs, you know.
Yep, exactly.
I would encourage anybody who's like, I hate this game now, I don't want to play anymore, to seriously think like and decide for yourself: is it just the mechs, or is it the overall meaning and message being presented to you? And then communicate that way, right? Spamming hashtag remove the mechs doesn't communicate necessarily your serious disappointment with the rest of the, you know, the outlook of the game or communications and all that kind of thing. So
but yeah, it's hard to do something like that, right? That's like pushing for serious like policy changes, like, you know, it's like you have to educate people on what the heck is going on. And again, I said the community is starting to catch on, but it's in small chunks, right? It's in small chunks.
And and the bigger problem about it is that it's in small chunks, but in ways that the general public won't care. The general public can rally behind mechs and be like, yeah, this is dumb and we hate it too. But the next crazy thing that feels really awful may not feel as awful to the general public, and they don't care about the grander scheme of like treatment and policy and philosophy and all that kind of stuff that is driving away would-be competitive players, right? Okay, let's bring in our next caller. Hey, how are you doing? Sorry, not how you doing. Well, I guess how you doing, but what's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hello, how you guys doing? What's up, Ball? What's up, Tim? How you guys doing? From New York. Basically in the top screaming
Wait, what's your name?
Oh, George. I don't know if I said it. My bad.
What's up, George? What's up? What do you want to talk about?
Yeah, it was basically about like the Fortnite philosophy, right? Because like 2 weeks ago or so, they put about the philosophy in their blog post, saying what they think is right. And I think it's more about they want to just bring new people into the comp scene with the whole mechs and like the rifts and season 8 and 7 with ballers or planes, whatever, all this stuff that's been added, right? It's always been in the competition scene. It's never been separated from the real casuals.
Okay.
So
What you're alluding to is you're basically saying all these changes they've been putting in are good, or they're trying to use them as good ways to funnel people into competitive Fortnite. Is that what you're saying?
Because at the end of the day, it just doesn't make sense, right? Like, why would you keep an item in a scrim lobby or like a pro people lobby that it has no skill to certain things? Like you sit in a ball, right? You're someone who doesn't know how to fight someone. You don't know how to box fight. You don't know how to do stuff, right? You somehow made up to like a couple points. You feel like you actually playing the game. You feel like you're like these players who are good. You're like, wait, I actually got points. I got placement. Oh, because I sit in the bar, or I killed a couple people because I sat in the mech the whole time, or I have max mats so I can survive longer for late game. Why has it never been separated? And I feel like they always want people to come to their game, right? Whether it's casual or comp. I feel like in the comp, they always want to just keep bringing people in. They want to make people feel like they can get a kill or two, get points, feel like they're actually participating. That's the whole point when you say, "Oh,
but in comp, that's the distinction you're making. Like they want them to feel that way in comp, like in a real competitive game where, okay."
Yeah, because because the core mechanics of Fortnite, right, is building, and now with the metas box fighting, kids who aren't the best at mechanical or box fighting, they're not going to be able to compete at the top tier level. So they almost
why would they want to do that though? Why would they want to funnel people into competitive?
Because it's a hard skill to learn, like box fighting, building, like the core mechanics of a.
Yeah, I get like how they would want to, right? I think that makes sense. I think that, but I'm just curious because like playing competitive Fortnite is something that I think we've kind of proved that they don't necessarily like. Again, it's an advertisement, right? I kind of see like maybe like there's like it kind of makes a little bit of sense, but
no.
But no, because of the way that they've treated everything else. So it's like we're trying to put words. Well, it's not even like they kind of try to say these things in a certain sense, but like we know that
they definitely want everyone to feel like they can win, right? They laid that out clear as day, and like both in their words and of course in all of their actions prior, right? Like that's neither here nor there. That's guaranteed, agreed on, right? They're trying to make it so anybody can win. But I don't think it's specifically in competitive or specifically to drive people to competitive, if for no reason other than like from the negative. There's so many easier things they could do to drive people to play competitive
100%.
and to get better at competitive than developing this crazy stuff and like pushing it because look, you can win in competitive now. That gets them nothing. That just devalues their competitive, makes their esport less interesting to other people who might otherwise see an interesting esport and come into it, right? That's something really interesting about esports scenes is that there's actually a lot of movement between like the semi-pro level. Like once you're pro at a game, you might be tempted to stick with that game for a really long time, right? But the semi-pro level, there's a lot of like, this scene looks like it's doing really well. I want to go play that game. And these sorts of things definitely don't draw those players in, which are probably the easiest players to draw in with like a decently run esports scene. So I don't know. I think even just from that aspect of like, look at what they're not doing that they could be, it's clear to me that these changes and additions are not in any way intended to be helpful for comp.
I
long
like
term or short term.
I like the positivity though.
I think it's like at the same time, it's like if they did remove like from the very get-go, from the very beginning, they removed planes when they separated it from casuals. They removed all this stuff. In the end of the day, it would just be mechanically, like your aim, everything has to be on point, right? Now no big things broken can destroy your gameplay. And from seeing a lot of young kids, right, a lot of the best people are like, from 13 to 18 years old. So like a lot of the kids who haven't learned, they started later in the Fortnite scene, they feel like they can't master, because it takes skill. It really does. When you mechanically build box fight, it takes a lot of practice. It takes a lot of hours.
Yeah.
And I think they don't want to make players, especially new ones who feel like they want to be in this comp world, feel like they have to train so hard. They have to give up so much stuff. They don't have, so they basically.
Definitely. That's part of the whole, we want anyone to win. Yeah.
Everybody can win.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's I feel like you kind of shoot yourself in the foot when you do that as a philosophy.
I agree completely. Thank you so much, George, for bringing this topic up for us, man. Have a fantastic evening.
Thank you guys. Take care.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but you take care as well.
Good.
It's this interesting thing. Like, I don't know, Balla, did you hear about the new Call of Duty franchising for the new game?
Yes.
So
Yes.
all franchise spots are backed by a city. Some cities are hosting multiple teams. Minimum $50,000 salary for a minimum of 7 players per team. Like, it's nutty. A minimum of 50% of all prize rewards go to the players. It's crazy. And already major orgs are buying up slots and stuff. That could have been Fortnite 6 months ago. You know what I mean? I'm not saying, I've made the case they don't want a franchise, whatever. But like, this Call of Duty season, if it goes well, if players like the game, it's going to be massive. We've seen Black Ops 4, their most recent tournament. Did you see the viewership numbers? That was crazy. It was rivaling World Cup numbers. It was rivaling the international numbers, but down by like maybe half a hundo.
Like a little bit last weekend or whatever.
Yeah. Like Twitch was
I
popping
wasn't
off.
paying
with
attention
it.
too much.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't watch it. Call of Duty's not my scene. But
Call of Duty's huge.
yeah, like
Duty's
it's
huge.
big.
It's always been huge. It's always been growing, and but they also have the same issues, like a lot of the same issues that Fortnite has in terms of like changing all the time and stuff like that.
And their issues, but they do it the same way as Smash Brothers, right? Where it's a new game, so players can still say, and event hosters can still say, nah, we're still playing the old game. Like, we're not moving to the new one yet. Like,
Yeah.
they have that freedom because it's not like a live game
Yeah,
as a
but-
service.
Now once you franchise, we're talking about a different game right now, but like once you franchise, all of a sudden like there's not so many other tournament organizers, right? It's just you,
Yep.
because you control so much.
My point being, though, is that this is huge. It's huge for esports in general. Just the terms of the contracts and the facts that they're going through, like it's happening. It's not just a pipe dream at this point. It boggles me because that could have been that. Like anytime we see Call of Duty advertisements and Call of Duty taking space and viewership numbers and stuff, it hurts to know that like Fortnite could have done this. Could be doing something similar.
So much potential.
Yep. Before we grab our next caller in here, I want to remind you guys again to submit some topics. But I've got a text comment here from It's Kozar. He says, do you think competitive solos is slowly dying out? Having only seen just 2 solo tournaments since World Cup, it feels like it might be hard to determine for sure if it's dying out, but we've only seen the digression of solo scrims in tournaments, going from playing for in-game to being more aggressive and having more of a W key styled format. You got a take on that, Balla?
Yes, I do. I feel like it can never die out if there's ever going to be a turn. Like they can all of a sudden offer some money for it and it will never die out. I think the competitive support, like the community support for competitive solos, is dying out. But it's just going to change whenever there's a tournament. Like they're just going to go back to play it.
Yeah.
Nobody practices solos. Nobody enjoys playing solos when there is money on the line, except when they win. The community is turning on it. I think we're close to seeing the end of solos for like a big tournament, and well, at least where we'll be happy, right?
I think trios is a great testament, or I think this whole brute situation, the FCS, is a testament to the strength of trios. That like there's still like, quite a lot of people playing trios and excited about trios despite all this other stuff happening. Could you imagine if FCS was solo events only plus all of this was happening? Ugh.
Yep.
I wouldn't have. Like, I just wouldn't have, But trios is a blast, right? Duos is decent. It's fun. Squads will be interesting to see. So, yeah, I think that's my hope is that, if it's dying, let it die. If people suddenly really start loving playing solos again and they want to bring it back as, like, the next FCS season, fine, whatever. But I want to see duos. I want to see squads. I want to see more trios for the following FCS.
And let me be clear, because I don't think solos can actually ever like die, right? Because there's always going to be demand for solos. Literally, I'm seeing people pop up in both my chat and your chat where it's like, I play solos. I really like solos. But like, there's always going to be people who don't want to find teammates or whatever, but they still want to compete. So that's always going to be a thing. I think to not harness and use that and do cash cups and stuff like that, like unimportant tournaments and like local tournaments and stuff like that, would be a mistake. I think we'll always see those. I don't think that will ever die.
Monster Deface in the chat says solos was the most hypish though at World Cup, so even if it isn't as dope to play, the stakes are higher though for viewers. And I kind of want to turn that on the head though, like why was solos the most hype at World Cup? Is it really because solos is the most fun to play and watch, or does it have to do with like huge differences in prize pools and the stakes for individual players, stakes for how it's presented, how well, you know, how easy it is to present one versus the other, and just how they were individually hyped, right?
Yep.
You know, Monster Deface says again, solos are the highest stakes and higher rewards, but they don't have to be the highest rewards, and they're only at highest stakes because you don't have a partner. So, like, I don't know.
The duos is put after like a creative World Cup and a really deflating day in the pro am and stuff like that. And,
yeah, exactly.
And again, it was also 6 games. Like there was a lack of story development into duo or into the duos tournament, and like. It wasn't because the community wanted the solos more. It was just because of the circumstances and how it was pushed in general. I don't disagree that solos have some aspect of like a little bit more fun to watch.
Still merit and value there, yeah.
But if it was done in the best possible ways, then I think everybody would enjoy watching duos in a significant portion because it's hype. The only thing right now that I think scuffs a lot of duo tournaments is the fact that the end games in duos end up being like super whack, where it's like 2 guys on high ground versus 1 guy on low ground, and that is super deflating. But there's also some of the best ever moments because of the dynamic, like
clutches.
Solos is not as dynamic and that deep as anything else. Solos is so like I've been saying this forever, but like when I was doing VOD reviews for World Cup solos, like every other week, bro, I was losing my mind because I'm watching the same thing over and over and over. I just did Booga and King, and it's like the same. It's literally the same thing. Both of their World Cup finals are played exactly the same way because there's an optimal way to play, and if you're not playing like that, you're throwing. So I tune into a new guy, and sure, the shots that he's hitting and stuff like that are way cooler, but it's the same thing over and over and over. Impulse in the zone, shadow bomb ahead, launch pad ahead, box up, wait, try to gatekeep, go. Like it's literally the same formula over and over and over. And that the lack of depth, I think that's indicative of the lack of depth.
Yeah. Something interesting, this is a total tangent. You mentioned the same thing over and over and over again. Something I'd love to see them experiment with, I talked about this before a lot, like tell us what the purpose is of a change you're making to the game so we can help you evaluate if it's accomplishing that or not, right? Like, anyway, we've had a lot of changes made to the game.
That came out of nowhere, buddy.
Well, the follow-up is that we've had a lot of changes made to the game that either, like, buff high ground play, buff low ground play, nerf one or the other. I would love to see some interesting new tools to enable playing from the mid ground longer and more interesting ways so that games and end games do develop in more interesting ways than just like, did I get high? Okay, just like scramble mid ground and try to stay off the ground until I run out of mats, right? Like,
I'm still gonna push that idea of never closing the zone and just having to constantly move because I think that would give more opportunities for people to make clutch plays. Because when you force that tiny zone, it's like, okay, well, the solo is forced to fight, not on his terms, like, and it's over. Cool, 2v1, GG, it's done.
Yep. I can agree with that. All right, let's bring in our last caller for the evening, Balla. Hey, what's your name and where are you calling from?
I'm Milla. I'm coming from NA East.
Nice. How's it going? And what do you want to talk about this afternoon? Yeah, it's still afternoon.
Yeah. I'd like to talk about like kind of the like tournament system for qualifying for Fortnite Championship Series. I think it's like the best they've had in a while.
Maybe ever.
Because ever. It funnels in players that are like the best for the grand finals to be the top of the top, but like there's still the point system is not fully there. I don't think like kills are, in my opinion, like rewarded way too much for a battle royale. But it's just there's a lot of RNG that like shouldn't be there, so that like kind of stops it from being the best of the best players there. And I know it's a battle royale, so there's going to be RNG, but it's just like, I don't know, it kind of stops it from being the top players at every single tournament.
So the statement is, this is the best format we've ever had, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. I don't think there's anything more but I am interested in having a conversation with you about like what we can improve more. So you're already talking about like kill incentive being less, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else besides that?
I think like it's just weird putting people into different places on the map because of no mobility. Is one of the things I don't like. It's just like it puts people into really weird spots, and it can throw off the best of the best players at any time. And it's just like I don't think it gets the top results.
Yeah,
it's interesting, the mobility thing. And I know when you submitted this topic too, you really harped on the mobility and the POI changes and stuff and how that affects things. It's interesting because less mobility, like map mobility, devalues further like edge drops. Doesn't make them like necessarily awful or anything like that. So plenty of people are landing edge. It devalues it though. And as those spots become devalued, I imagine we see more people at named POIs in places closer to the middle of the map. You know, things like a lot of people dropping at retail or whatever. And that's interesting to me whether or not that was an intentional change to encourage, once again, more fighting early. Just by dint of more people are more likely to land with each other through this change as a tertiary change. But you kind of just mentioned how it feels like the RNG of the game itself doesn't necessarily match the approach for consistency out of the format.
Yeah.
I think that's fine though. I think that's fine, right? Because we have a format that rewards consistency. That finally means that like we are literally mitigating our RNG in the format. I think this is the one time that this is finally happening because we have multiple stages. We have 3 hours to play. We have 10 games to play. Like, yeah. I honestly think that we could even do better in terms of like how many stages and all this sort of thing we could do, because we could finally get down to customs and even have another 10 games or whatever. And we will have that actually. But yeah, like the concept of like, this can't be, and I know this isn't what you said, but the concept of like battle royales can't be competitive because of all the RNG, the loot RNG, the landing spot RNG, zone RNG, all this stuff, like that doesn't make a game uncompetitive. And I'm seeing this more and more and more and more, this concept. It's just not, in my opinion, it's just not wrong. I mean, it's not right at all, because there's so many things you do over a course of a game to mitigate RNG, right? That is literally your goal as a competitive Fortnite player. It is so much your goal. And then the formats can help you too, right?
Yeah.
Cool. All right, Mello, thanks so much for bringing this up for us to talk about. Have a fantastic evening.
You too.
Cool.
All right, boss, keep it mellow, brother.
Keep him mellow. Keep it mellow yellow. What a good drink. All right, so we have one more thing that we can mention, Balla, that you want to talk about, but we don't have time to bring the caller in. But Fendi Toxics, he mentions that NA West, one of the hardest and most consistent regions in all of Fortnite, should not have the low prize pool it has, regardless of population. He wants to know if we agree with this, or if we think it's fine the way it is, or if there are any other regions that should have a prize pool increased. And this is something you reacted to almost immediately, Balla. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I don't think prize pool should be based on population at all. Right? I don't think any other game does it that way. I don't think any other sport does it that way, right?
Yep.
It's a very inclusive way to do things, but like we should be rewarding the best of the best with the best of the best.
I mean, it's not even that
sure
inclusive. I mean, I don't.
Well, it is, right? Because we're including all the different regions, no matter how good or whatever that they are, right? Like you can have a region that, like the Middle East right now, it's getting better, but it doesn't have the support, and it never had the support, so it hasn't grown that competitive scene. They're definitely not going to be the best.
Yeah.
but NA West has some of the best players.
Just look at
World Cup. They had,
yeah.
they are almost always the furthest ahead of the meta, right? They have Psalm over there. Like that's already no. That's but like Epic Whale, Psalm, all these guys are like so involved with each other and like creating the meta, and then they compete against each other. They are so far ahead that it's mind-boggling that they aren't getting a certain like the
yeah. I mean, it's next we lost like one of our really good players, Rasan to East, you know, and he's definitely not the only one. It's frustrating, but also it's tough because it would be such an arbitrary decision to say, okay, we're gonna give more money to NA West but not to Brazil, or we're gonna give more money to Brazil and NA West but not to Middle East. You know, at least with population, there's like a set rubric of what you can expect. You know, like okay, like this is why they're doing this. I don't know. I would want, if they're gonna make changes like that, I don't know. I guess just arbitrarily increasing the prize pool for West is still something I would love to have happen, you know, as a West player. Yeah. But it's weird because I don't know what the justification is beyond, it seems like there are good players in this region, you know? I mean, if they only have a set amount of money for each event, where does that come from then, right? Is NA East and Europe all going to have lower prize pools to equalize it?
How does Epic... How is there even a way to figure out like the right terms of pricing in terms of skill level? There's not, especially unless you do a only global or only, you know, you can qualify through this region to a final thing where it's just the prize pool overall is this, and you can qualify with this amount of spots. Yeah. I'm curious how like CS:GO does it actually, like how the major system works, because there's only certain slots from each different region to qualify for the minor, for the major qualifier, I think it is, right? There's so many different stages where it's like, okay, this region will all play against each other, and we'll pick the best 6 or whatever, and then they'll go into a tournament with like literally the qualifiers from everywhere else, and then they'll play against each other to figure out who's qualifying for the actual major. And I guess they probably adjust the slots based on how they perform and how they qualify for the major. I think those are the best ways to do that sort of thing. I don't know. It's an interesting topic, but I think the only thing that's certain is that NAS is really fucking good. They're way better than people think. Way better.
Yep, 100%. They have thrived in our situation. Which is really interesting. Destiny's Jesus in chat said, NAS has good players, but they're the top 0.0001%. I think you got to add more zeros on there, both for NA East and NA West, right? There's just so many players, and the competitive scene makes up such a small portion. But even then, I don't know if you can just like flippantly throw that out there. Like, I don't know how you would gauge average skill at this point in Fortnite, right? But it might just be the case that NA West's average skill isn't that much lower than NA East's average skill. And that'd be a factor.
Hey, hold on.
A ton of players.
Hold on. Let's give some more props to the FCS format, because it's literally doing the right thing. The only thing is that there's weekly qualifiers that they give money for, and sure, they have to have a way to figure out how to give that money away. But like FCS is doing what we want, right? The NA West, they're gonna they have their own tournament. Like, sure, the only thing that's missing is like okay, never mind. I'm completely lunching. I'm lunching. They're not doing the thing, but they're close to it, right? Because they have the qualifying rate. They're close, man. If it was like NA all came together and played against each other, then it would be cool. But I fucked up. Never mind.
Definitely.
I'm an actual bot.
Oh, you're great. We love you. All right, I think that's about it for time for episode 13 of Hotline FN here. Balla, thanks so much once again for coming on the show and co-casting. Thanks so much to everyone who called in. If you enjoyed what they had to say, make sure you search them up, say hi, and express your appreciation to them as well as to us. Before we do our final goodbyes, I want to really stress, if you're watching this stream and you don't follow Balla TW, boy oh boy, are you missing out on some phenomenal content. I do this once a week. Balla does this like 8 days a week, it feels like. The guy is just cranking out incredible content about the state of the game, how to play the game to your best, and the competitive scene and events in general. That being said, Balla, what are you going to be up to, and where can people find you getting up to it?
Yeah, I'm going to be going off for a little bit, but I'm going to be coming back and doing Hey Ball, I have a question after I prepare. So literally like right after this on my channel, we're going to be doing that. But I do also want to throw back the props, guys. If you're watching the show and you don't follow Tim, make sure you do, because it's where all the Hotline FN stuff comes out of and where we're interacting the most with the chat and all that. So if you're watching on my stream, go over to Tim's channel. It's in the title, Timmcd, Timmcd. And follow that. And yeah, guys, it's been a blast. Besides doing Hey Balla, I have a question later, I'll be doing more VOD reviews, I'll be doing more content, I'll be doing everything. So stay tuned, and you're gonna hear my voice a lot in the near future.
Perfect, brilliant. Thanks so much, Balla, and have a phenomenal evening.
Bye.
Thanks everybody for sticking around for episode 13 of Hotline FN. I hope you've enjoyed what you've either watched or later on in podcast form listened to. We always have a great time. I have a fantastic time doing the show. If you have people you want to see on the show as guests, bother them, bother us. Throw it up on socials. You know how to get people's attention. It's 2019. It's easier than it's ever been, and still really difficult sometimes. So keep that in mind. But again, thanks for watching. Make sure you follow Balla TW. Please follow me here on Timmcd. If there's something I'll reiterate every week, and that applies to everything in your life, if there's something you like that you're getting for free, support it, or it won't always be there. I'm not like threatening, follow me, or we're canceling the show, but just in general, like as a good life philosophy. You go to a local band, buy a t-shirt, you know? Damn, sheesh. What are you doing? Freeloaders. Thanks for watching Hotline FN.